let's do a thought experiment. Pick any company of your choice, get all the CVs of everybody in that company, right? Then ask the CEO to fire everybody in the company, maybe except even HR, fire everybody in the company, and then rehire everybody with the exact same resumes, right? Is it the same company?
I doubt it.
My point exactly. You see what I mean? So not only are employees important, but employees are non-fungible. So you should be very careful as a company when you choose to hire and fire and rehire people, because you are changing the character of your company and your
So
company may not survive that transition. Yay, we're live. How's it going, Scott?
I've been sick for 2 weeks, and I'm scared to get checked out because I'm scared I'm going to be diagnosed with something that I don't want to be diagnosed with. How
I
are you doing, Odie?
I know, but I suspect it's like maybe a flu or something, but I can really tell from your voice, it's kind of
Man,
bad.
oh man, I forgot to put on my light. You should have told me. All right,
All right, man. So, what are we talking about today?
Odie,
What are we
it
reacting to
was
today?
about a year or two ago. I had saw a video on YouTube by a content creator named I think his name was like Joshua Fluke.
Okay.
Yeah, Joshua Fluke. And there's a specific video titled Carvana fires 2,500 workers. And it was a leaked video of a conference call in which the business made a difficult decision, eliminating approximately 2,500 jobs from their payroll. And Joshua appeared to disagree with that decision. And based on what I remember in that video, which I haven't looked at in like a year or two, he was vilifying the leadership. Like, how dare they protect the the life of the business and investors and decide that keeping people employed is more important than actually having a business actually go down. So that's the way I interpreted the video, and we could react to it. And again, like this is from like a year or two ago, so even I'm reviewing the video again after like a significantly long time.
Okay. All right. Let me just go ahead and share the screen. All right. Starting the video.
Unfortunately, demand for cars is much lower than we had planned for, and our operations teams overbuilt for those levels. A leadership decision has been made to address the imbalance by reducing the size of our operations teams. Our door will be open in the future as we start growing and rehire again.
What you saw right there was the Zoom call that a lot of employees had to watch at Carvana as they were finding out they were getting let go. Now, if you don't know what Carvana is, which you probably do by now, but it's the company that has big car vending machines. You go drop this ridiculously oversized coin into a slot and it brings your car down and pushes it out for you. And they're disrupting the car buying experience or something like that. Anyways, they laid off 12% of their company a couple days ago, which translates to about 2,500 people. Why is that, you must be wondering? Well, for the same reasons that a lot of startups do these random layoffs all of a sudden. Better.com, they over leveraged, they overhired, something in the market happens, and then they have to fire people. If we look at that company called Toast, the little payment processor thing for food or whatever, they overhired, over leveraged, and then had to fire a bunch of people. And what we're seeing here is just another example of a company claiming, we're growing crazy fast. Wow, look at us. And then going, we grew too fast. Hold on, back up. Now we got to fire all these people. If a company comes to you saying that they're having crazy accelerated growth, I see that as a red flag, not as a positive. It could be a positive, but
we're growing like crazy.
Okay. I know this is very, very early in the video, but I think that's some context. It is a very weird place to pause. But
until one of these things.
but yeah, the context is what he said is correct. There were a lot of companies that over leveraged and did a lot of things, and when the pandemic hit, you know, they were caught with their pants down. Warren Buffett has a famous saying. He said that when the tides go down, that's when you find out who has been swimming naked in the ocean, right? Many of these companies, have been enjoying the financial waters because interest rates were high, and then the moment interest rates crashed, then those people who were doing shady things were now exposed to the limelight. So I think that's the context he's setting. So I think that's something that is worth remembering.
Things happen. So CEO sent out a giant email to the entire company explaining all this stuff. I actually have a copy of that email. Let me pull that up for you. It starts off going, "Hey everyone, we find ourselves in a difficult moment. It isn't the first time we've faced challenges and it won't be the last." And essentially, this is just a bunch of fluff buttering you up to get to why they're doing it. So the TLDR, as I have defined, is: as a result, we find ourselves out of balance. Our team is bigger than we need, and we can't be certain growth will rebound quickly enough to bring us back into balance. So what does this mean? Today, we're reducing the size of our team by about 12%. That's 2,500 people. 2,500 people who we've been proud to call teammates, who made our mission their mission, and who have fought beside us. Now, let's pause right here. You'll notice how when you're working at a company, they'll call you family. You'll notice how you are applying to a company, they'll say, "Yeah, come join the family." Before and while you're at a company, it's all about family this, family that. But when things aren't looking good, when people got to go, you are now teammates. This is a blog from Carvana itself here talking about how they're all family. At Carvana, a strong sense of community and family is as much a part of our DNA than anything else.
Well, in fairness to them, right? Every company uses the same slogans, because I can almost guarantee you that even the HR didn't write that piece originally, right? They probably copied it from somewhere else, and so on and so forth. I feel like it's one of those things that you see on websites that's just cliche. You know, you can't really blame companies for being so cliched about their workplace and stuff like that, and all this text. Of which, if you think about it, that's kind of his point, in the sense that a company can say we're all family all they want, right? At the end of the day, it's a business and they are going to do business things.
Yeah, so far the first so many minutes of this video, what does it say? 2 minutes, 32 seconds of the video. Like there's nothing that I disagree with what he's saying. And I understand why he's saying it. So it's fair, right? So let's keep listening.
All right.
It's kind of funny because this was posted April 29th, but over here in the CEO's layoff email, they're just proud to call you teammates. You're not family anymore. The CEO goes on to say, "Next, I want to share the important details for what this means for you in terms of severance." They say, "We will be providing everyone with 4 weeks of pay plus 1 week for every year you have been with us." Now, I'm not quite so sure how they're dealing with the WARN Act, which is the Worker Adjustment and Retraining Notification Act. It basically says if you have over 100 workers and a majority of them haven't been there for less than 6 months or work on average 20 hours or less, you have to give your employees 60-day notice if you're doing a layoff of 50 or more people in one place. And that kind of seems like what's happening at Carvana. It doesn't seem like they got a 60 days calendar notice that they were going to get let go. And if you don't do that as a company, you have to pay your workers something instead. So it kind of sounds like they're doing this out of the goodness of their heart, but I imagine they're just following the minimum guidelines of whatever the WARN Act is requiring them to legally do. The next thing I'd like to point out.
Do you know about that? I'm not a US person, so I don't really know how the laws work in the US.
The short answer is I'm not versed in regulations for W-2 and what the policies are or what the regulation is for terminating employment. But
Mhm.
the short answer is no.
Okay. Okay, but in your experience, does this sound like standard normal stuff, like providing 4 weeks of pay plus, you know um or do you think it's have you seen I think the question I'm asking is, have you seen layoffs that were worse than this, right? Mass layoffs that were done where multiple, more than 50 people were laid off and they weren't given some kind of, severance pay or something like that.
Yeah, I think there's policies um, where based on the amount of time that you spent, and again, I'm not the authority on this, but there may be policies per state where, based on the amount of years that employee has served the company, that there's a policy for severance pay. But I don't know if that's the incentives of the actual business or corporation, or if it's really a
The
state
legal thing.
mandate. Yeah, so
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay.
What I will say is there's a sense of entitlement, I think, regardless of if the state enforces that policy or not. And this is me speaking from the role for the past 10 years or more as a software contractor,
Mm,
right? Contractor, like, there's no love. There's no, as far as I'm concerned, like, I mean, I don't usually work W-2, I do corp to corp. And so my understanding could be flawed, but I just can't go apply for unemployment. Like, I haven't been, I pay taxes, but my taxes are not through a W-2, right? And
mm.
that may have something to do with workers' compensation. Uh, yeah, we could continue.
Yeah, yeah. I get you. I get you. But I just feel like this should be standard practice. So I kind of agree with what he's saying in the sense that if you're going to lay off more than 50 people, it's different if an employee does something that is fireable, right? And you fire them on the spot. That's a completely different case. But if you decide that, oh, I want to let go of a huge chunk my, you know, of my workforce, then it makes sense because remember, you're the one instigating it, not them. So I think it makes sense that as a business owner, you have to compensate them somehow. Because think about it, the reverse is also true, right? If someone decides to just quit on the spot, many companies will say you have to give us a month's notice, right? So why is it?
I'll say that they could fire you on the spot.
But yeah, they can fire you on the spot, but let's say you want to terminate the agreement, right? You still have to give them like a month notice or 2 weeks notice or
No,
something.
you don't have to. There's no law. Like, we do this through the kindness of our heart because it's the professional thing to do when having a professional relationship with someone that you're trying to support in
Mm.
regards to their business. It's voluntary.
Yeah.
I've walked off of jobs before. Like,
No,
I have.
I think I'm using Nigerian standard because I'm still new to the West and the way things are done here. But in Nigeria, in your employment letter, you would have a clause like that. And what that clause essentially does is if the company was supposed to pay you any severance by law, they would deduct your last month's salary from it. So say for example, you quit in September, right? You were supposed to give them a notice that September so that your quitting will now become October. So they will take your October salary from your severance that they were supposed to pay you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think there's something similar here where you're like 2 or 3 weeks in the hole.
Mhm.
And again, I'm not versed in this because I usually don't do W-2, but yeah, I think that may also be a factor.
Yeah. I feel like if they have such stipulations on, like you said, we do it out of the goodness of our heart, etc., etc. If we are expected to do that, then it also makes sense that businesses should do the same as well for whoever it is that they are letting go, right? Give them some form of compensation. And I think 4 weeks here kind of aligns with that 1 month I just discussed. So it sounds fair to me. Moving on.
At here is plus 1 week for every year you have been with us. Now, this is interesting. I've never seen company loyalty rewarded when people get fired. You'd think company loyalty happens while you're working at the company, being loyal to the company. But at Carvana, they are literally rewarding you with extra severance for every year you've been loyal to them. So Carvana was founded in 2012, I believe, which means the company is 10 years old. So at maximum, you could get 14 weeks of extra pay in terms of severance. Now, 14 weeks sounds like a lot, but if you just break that apart, it's 3.5 months. The 3.5 months of free money sounds pretty good, but I highly doubt anyone who's been working there for 10 years is on this list of people getting let go. And if they are, I mean, they get 3.5 months of severance, which I'm pretty sure that's like the bare minimum package you get if you just work at Netflix. Like, I don't know. It seems kind of like we're doing this out of the goodness of our heart, but like you're doing this part because the law requires it, and then you're rewarding corporate loyalty as you're firing them. It's really weird. They're doing a few other things. We'll be providing extended health care for everyone for 3 months. That's kind of nice. You will also get the benefit of your Carvana shares and all shares associated with the 1 million car milestone gift. I don't know what that is. Through our People Ops team, we're going to offer support and resources, including resume review, LinkedIn help, and tips to identify your next step in your career. What did I identified this as useless fluff. Yeah, this bottom one always gets me. And finally, our door will be open for rehire once we start growing again. And maybe there's people that will want to come back, but also it's kind of awkward that you kind of are growing right now. Work at Carvana, be part of the team disrupting the car buying status quo. I have to say real quick.
This is the part where I'm sure my opinion is not popular. How many employees does this individual have? Right? Maybe he hires someone to produce his videos so that it's of a certain production quality. But the issue that I kind of have is like this privileged mentality of I haven't built a business that employs hundreds or thousands of people, let alone dozens, and the amount of sacrifice, the amount of learning, the revelations made, right? Uh, I'm not sure if this individual that is being a critic has gone through those motions to really understand the sacrifices and the learnings or the lessons learned. He's just blasting, oh, this is an employer. They should know better. They've been around for 12 years. They make so much money or they've reported so much money. It's again like, are you an employer? How many families do you feed with your payroll? Like it's easy to throw stones, but it's like I just feel like he's criticizing without really operating at a CTO or any other C band level. And I don't think that's right. I mean, we all have opinions, but usually critics are people that aren't the ones doing it, right? They're on the sidelines talking about how bad something is, but they're not the ones that have even experienced what it's like to be on the field. So, yeah.
So I kind of agree with him in some aspects, right? And I'll tell you why. Um, Everything stops at leadership, right? Everything stops at leadership. Leadership is essentially the person driving the car. Now, think about it from the perspective of a car analogy. If you're driving the car and you get into an accident, right, and God forbid some of the passengers in the car have to pay the ultimate sacrifice or are badly injured, right, it's still the fault of the driver, because there are other companies that still play in that space that probably didn't lay off as many people as this company is laying off. So as management, you have to take responsibility, right? When I say taking responsibility, is it says that it has to it you have to reflect on your decisions. Why did you end up where you ended up, right? And you can't blame, because you have to remember that the people who are joining your company, right, lives are involved, right? Their life, their livelihoods, they're essentially betting everything on your company. And then
Well,
when you
they
do,
shouldn't,
I'll get
right?
to
It's a
that.
completely
Yeah.
different mentality. We have this first world problem where people believe that, the business is their family and that the business owes them. The business doesn't owe anything. They don't. The sooner that we exercise stoicism, the better off we all are.
No, I agree. I agree with that. But what I'm trying to say is you can't you can't blame them for feeling a certain kind of way when, and this is the part that I don't know if he has mentioned yet, but I'm going to really, really point out, is that more often than not, when all these cuts are made in the company, right, you find out that the people at the top are the ones who get, even after they've laid off 2000 something staff, they still get millions of dollars in bonuses, right? And it's like, where you're speaking from both sides of your mouth. You can't say if you really say, oh, we're a family, we're in this together, like in quotes, as I'm talking about the messaging from the corporate people, if you're really doing all that, then how come you are having profits and doing profit sharing for the top level people, whereas some of the main people who are working in your company were let go? I feel like that double standard is just it's what makes all these gestures, even though the gesture, I won't lie, right? The packages and stuff they gave to their customers were good. So it's not really a problem of that, but it starts to sound hollow when that's what you did, but you still end up getting bonuses and salary increases and stuff like that. It's like at some point you have to take responsibility and be like, okay, you know what, I'm going to skip bonuses for this year. How about that? Just to have more people still remaining in the company or something like
In
that.
a utopic world, utopia, whatever that word is, sure. But we don't live in that world. We don't. We live in a world of politics. We live in a world where people are motivated to look out for themselves first, look out for their family second, their friends third, and at the last of the line is people that they really don't have anything in common with, but the relationship of employee or partner, right?
Okay,
It's
in that case, so I agree with you. I get it, but I think my argument. I don't know if that's his argument as well because I've not seen this video. But my argument would be, if that's your stance, then get away. Get rid of all this superficial nonsense of we're family, we want to blah blah blah. Just come out and say what needs to be said, and let. But I think it's the two-facedness of the situation that just seems like hypocrisy.
yeah, it I agree that hold up. I thought we were a family, but I'm not treated like family. I'm treated like a peasant. And leadership, they're treated like family. They have the golden parachutes, right? That's the term you were
Yep.
looking for.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but again, I'll say stoicism again. Like we're human beings. We're gods of the earth. We should have enough wisdom and experience to learn that just what people say doesn't necessarily mean that when tested that they're going to deliver, right? That's proven time after time. And so like I just think that it's gullible to believe that an employer is really going to look out for you, right?
Yeah.
HR, when you have a dispute with your employer, HR does not care about you. They care about the employer. They care about the business. The sooner you understand that how effed up that business is in the way that they operate and the decisions that they make and how come they're not following this practice. It's a best practice and it's designed based on the experience and pitfalls of history with other companies. I don't understand. I'm going to HR because they should know better. HR doesn't care about you. They care about propping up the business. Again, the sooner that people realize that it's not about them and it's about the business and
The
and,
better.
and who controls that business, the less the disappointment I think people will have, employees will have.
True. True. All right, let's move on.
All these companies talk about disrupting the status quo, but all you end up doing is just disrupting a bunch of families' lives because you overhire and over leverage. Okay, I've said my piece.
That's pretty much my point, in the sense that so here's my analogy, right? So let me make my own case for why I agree with him. A company's most valuable asset is its employees, right? And
No,
it- okay, then what's a company's most valuable asset?
their customer.
No, but their
It,
customer is not their asset.
the customer
It,
when you have reoccurring revenue, when you have residual revenue, when you
Mhm.
have subscription models, memberships, it's the customer that keeps paying them. The employees don't
Yes,
pay the
but
bills, the customers
yeah,
do.
but the company doesn't own the customers, right? The company services the customer. I'm talking about the things the company owns, right? The things that belong to the company.
What
The
the company
employees are the most valuable.
I'm not sure if I 100% agree with that. I would say that the intellectual property that the employees produce, yeah, that's what they own.
But
Uh,
it's still, yeah, I get you, but it's still the employees that produce that intellectual property, right? That's the point I'm making.
there is, but there's levels to this, right? Employees are not all created equal. I would argue
I
that a
agree.
CEO is an employee of the investors,
I
right? But
agree.
I understand what you're
But
saying.
but I can tell you right now that companies are like buildings of Jenga, right? They have key employees. Obviously, not all employees are the same. I get that. But they have key employees in key positions, all arranged in key ways that if you disrupt, remember what we talked about boss factor. If you disrupt three or four of them, some companies may never recover from it, right? And that shows you that the employees are the most important. I can give you another analogy.
Sure, sure. If you
Let
remove all the employees, Odie, do
let me
you?
give you an analogy, right? So let's do a thought experiment. Pick any company of your choice, get all the CVs of everybody in that company, right? Then ask the CEO to fire everybody in the company, maybe except even HR, fire everybody in the company, and then rehire everybody with the exact same resumes, right? Is it the same company?
I doubt it.
My point exactly. You see what I mean? So not only are employees important, but employees are non-fungible. So you should be very careful as a company when you choose to hire and fire and rehire people because you are changing the character of your company and your
So,
company may not survive that transition.
so Odie, there's a couple points that I think we should revisit based on the statement that you made. Okay.
Okay.
One
Mhm.
is the example that you provided, and I know I said should say you provided, right? Because I'm making it personal. The statement
Mhm.
that was provided was fire all the employees with
Yeah.
the resumes, and then hire employees with the same types of resumes, right?
Mhm.
That doesn't describe the case that we're discussing right now. The case that we're discussing right now is 12% of employees.
Okay.
Okay.
So
Hold up, hold up.
okay.
Are you familiar with the bell curve?
Yes.
At a high level, maybe you can explain it better than I can. What at a high level, what is a bell curve, or what is the motivation of a bell curve?
Well, the thing with the bell curve is that there's a lot of misconception around it. But what I will say though is that that bell curve is just called the normal curve in statistics, and it applies to everything. It applies to the height of trees. It applies to, the sizes of stars. It applies to. Um, it's not particularly about human beings or human productivity or anything like that. Like what it essentially is saying is that most of anything will be clustered around a central value, right? The distribution of things or metrics, statistics, blah blah blah, across a spectrum usually follows like a bell curve, meaning that most of the concentration of the things you measure about that thing will be centered in one place, and then there will be outliers on the two other edges, right? So what's the point you're trying to make with the bell curve?
The point that I'm trying to make with the bell curve is the fact that uh, you not all employees operate with the same quality or produce the same value, right? How many times have we heard, and is it relatively accurate that in general, 20% of your assets at times, more often, produce the bulk of the value,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
It, in general, maybe it's not 20%, maybe it's 30%, or maybe it's 35%. But the point is that there's usually a fraction of
Mhm.
an asset um, that yields way more than the rest of what we have.
Mhm.
And so the point that I was trying to make with the bell curve is you're going to have a smaller percentage of high performers,
Mhm.
and then that 12%, it's not my place, but that 12% that was removed essentially by leadership is saying, here's 12% of people that if we remove them, we believe that these are the people that will not disrupt our business as much. And so we're willing to let them go. with emphasis on as much, right? So that they can reorganize or restructure. And so, yeah, my point with the bell curve is it's an opportunity for employers to, and I know this sounds harsh, right? But one of the practices is to remove 10, 12% of the low performers and provide an opportunity for higher performing people to fill in the ranks. And you continuously go through that cycle in which you, over time, increase productivity, quote unquote, productivity.
I disagree.
Okay.
I disagree. And you know why I disagree? I disagree because that rule remains regardless of who you hire. That rule is it's a deep, I don't know how to describe it, but it's kind of like a deep philosophical problem that doesn't get you can't eliminate it with sheer force. Even if you tried, you're still going to be in the same place. So guess what? Even after you fire, just listen to me. Even after you fire and you rehire quote unquote A players and they come and join your ranks, all that has happened is that your what do they call it, you've just replaced maybe some of the people who were in the top percentage will now sink to the lower percentage, but your company still remains the same, still quote unquote operates the same. That's the point I'm trying to make. And back to the reason I gave the example, this is very important. The reason I gave the example of firing everybody and rehiring everybody was that I was trying to draw my analogy to the extreme to kind of buttress my point. The point I'm making is that there is a temptation for management to treat individuals as though they are, you've heard this thing, human resources, as though they are individual blocks of server compute that I can tear down and then ask for another server back from AWS and it's no big deal. But it is a big deal because you are not getting the same person back. If you fire somebody and rehire somebody for the same position, you're not getting the same person back. You're getting new. So there are two things. First, you're getting new characteristics, new team new team dynamics, new everything, and you have disrupted the lives of the person you let go.
The
So
business doesn't care about that latter part.
I know the business doesn't care about it, but the point I'm getting at is that no, the business does care about it, but they care about it up until how it affects their bottom line. That's the point I'm making. Because think about it, sometimes the business, okay, so this is the exchange between the business and the employees. One of the reasons I believe the business is selling this idea of, oh, we're a family, oh, we're this, we're that, is because the business knows that in order to extract the most you can out of your employees, right, you have to give them something to work for. If you want your employee to work extra time, to do overtime, and all those kind of things, to go the extra mile for you, you have to give them something to believe in. And that's the reason why I believe a lot of these companies come up with all these stories and so on and so forth saying, oh, blah, blah, blah. It's because they want to extract the most they can out of the employees. And one of the ways to do that is to ensure that is to at least give the illusion, even if that's not the reality, give the illusion that you care about those employees to get some of the employees working. Because let me tell you something, if employees acted like robots the way the companies wanted or the way the companies treat them, the companies wouldn't like that. Right. So imagine if every time your boss says, oh, we need this thing done by tomorrow, the employee says you have to pay extra, you have to pay for overtime like a consultant, which is part of the reason why companies don't really care for consultants, because consultants can come, like the relationship between a consulting firm or a consultant and a company is very different from the relationship between a company and an employee. Does that make sense?
It does. I would argue that companies just want employees to be obedient. I would argue that the majority of companies, overwhelming majority, they're not interested in their employees telling them how they should change their processes and their policies. Uh, most organizations, I would most being like the ones that are not high performing organizations, they tend to respond, right? They're not proactive, right? They respond to problems instead
Mm,
of continuously improving and figuring out how they can continuously improve. They wait for issues to come up and then they react to it. So like
I
I,
would agree to that, but I would also say that like companies also want employees to take ownership of the company, right? It's also the reason they give stocks out and things like that. They want the employees to have the mentality of this business is my business and I'm going to go above and beyond as though it is my business, which is why you hear all this story of, oh, we're a family and all of those kind of stuff. Is because even though what you said is 100% correct, in reality the company, the HR just cares about the company, and that's their sole purpose. But one of the ways they have figured out to game the system, quote unquote, with their employees is to give that impression of, oh, this is also your business, this is a family, we're a commune, so that you can give more than you. It won't be a strictly, okay, I'm going to work exactly 3 hours, and at the end you can't extract even a 5 minutes of value from me after that. You get what I mean?
yeah, I get it. We can move
Yeah.
on.
Yeah, okay, let's move on.
Piece. Now, let's go to the open positions here. Let's see what they got. 825 open positions at Carvana. Now, they're not all operational positions. I understand that, but why couldn't you move some of these people that you're firing into some of these positions or train them up or do any of that stuff? Lastly, he wants to thank you. Thank you for bringing your talents to Carvana, for choosing to care every day. You've made us better. It's like reading Vishal's email. The market has shifted. It's out of our control, blah, blah, blah. But don't worry, things are looking up. And then they did 2 more layoffs after that. That's how I read this. So if you work at Carvana still, if you're one of the lucky few that got left there, I'd start looking. The economy and the automotive industry dealt us a tough hand, and the remainder of the fault lies within the executive team. More than anyone, it lies with me. Once again, we have executives making a bunch of decisions behind closed doors that affect thousands and thousands of people and their families. And that's just how it goes when you work for someone. To counter that, you always have applications out and you always have your eyes looking out for.
You want to say something?
Yeah. So again, where would these people work otherwise? And the answer is, well, they would work somewhere else. And I just think it's that simple. Like the it's easy to criticize other people, especially when you're not doing what they're doing, right? It's easy for sports anchors, commentators to talk about how sorry some athlete is on the court or on the field, but they're the ones that are not on the field. They're on the sidelines. And I just feel like this individual, he's doing the same thing. It's like it's someone's choice to work somewhere. We shouldn't believe organizations care about us. We shouldn't. And how many individuals does this person employ? Right? How many families does he feed? And the answer is it's likely that he doesn't feed that many, if any at all. But he's roasting an employer that does. Even if that employer has fed that family or 2,500 families for 6 months, for 12 months, for someone that is currently in between assignments, which is a formal way of saying unemployed, like you tend to be very humble and you tend to value the opportunities where you can make money, especially working as a consultant or contractor, where you may have 6 months at a time and may go another 8 months without any work. So, make long story short, just to summarize, he's roasting these employers, but yet he doesn't employ somebody. So, are people better off sitting on their hands, looking for work, and have no money coming in? Or is there an opportunity for them to at least have 6 months of income coming in so they can pay some of their bills and then defer that stress for another time? My mentality is so different because I'm not used to being employed 365. I'm used to having 6 months breaks or more in between assignments.
Mm.
So that's all.
So I agree with you, and trust me, in Nigeria, You don't get things like this. Like once you're fired, you're let go, you leave immediately, right? They won't even pay you any severance. There's no unions or anything like that. And yeah, nobody will save you. If there's anything that you learn very, very quickly as a Nigerian, is nobody is coming to save you. So I totally get the where you're coming from on that, right? But where am more empathetic to his cause is that if you are on the receiving end of such a distraught message, right? You have bills to pay, you have mortgages and stuff like that. It sucks. It really sucks. And it's one thing if the people who caused this hap or this mishap or this misfortune are, you know, held accountable, right? Or they suffer some kind of repercussions for it as a business. And it's another thing to just throw your employees under the bus because it's the easy thing to do. Because that's what many companies do, right? They just throw their employees under the bus. Yeah, whatever. We just fire extra 12,000 people and it will be all good. I still get my yacht though, and stuff like that. And I think that is what is animating his anger, you know. Um, yeah, that's how I see it.
And I understand why that's unfortunate. That's reality. And I'm sorry, human nature and Mother Nature don't give a damn about your feelings. They don't. Look at how stray, supposed to be domesticated animals get treated on the streets, right? Look
Mhm.
at how wildlife gets treated in the Serengeti or Alaska. Like, it, nature doesn't care, Mother Nature or human nature. So build a bridge and get over it.
True.
Period. I've learned
Okay.
talking to terminal people that life isn't fair. The human body isn't perfect. There's genetic anomalies that cause early graves. The sooner we realize that we don't live in a perfect society, the sooner we realize that nature of any sort doesn't care about our feelings, doesn't care about our opinions, the better we'll be able to just manage when these things do occur. And they will occur repeatedly.
Well,
Stoicism.
my pushback to that is we fight nature all the time. Civilization is all about fighting mother nature, right? And winning. And as much as yes, you're correct, you know, companies don't care. There are companies that do get it right and don't have to fire people because they managed their resources better. Apple is a good example. During this last layoffs, Apple didn't really lay off anyone. And the reason for that was because Apple, even during the boom, set aside money to make sure that you know they don't have that this business disruption. Because I'll tell you this, right? As much as it's easy to say the business can do whatever it wants, fires, fine, but understand that the balance of the team, right? The balance of the existing people in the company, the mindset of the existing people in the company will be altered because of that decision. In the sense that the people who are left will now start looking out for themselves. Whatever teamwork that was, you know, whatever bond, whatever teamwork that was working really well in the company, the moment certain people are laid off and certain people remain, the people who remain will now see themselves as a possible target, right? And like what Josh was about to say, they will start looking for CVs, they will start looking outside, they will start doing other things. And that takes away from whatever goal, business goal that you are trying to achieve. So as much as laying off people in huge numbers to save the company makes sense, I get it. But understand that such layoffs are not zero risk to the company either, right? They also affect the company. And I think that's my own pushback on what he is saying is that I'm sure most of these organizations know that. And as much as he paints them as bad guys who just throw people under the bus and so on and so forth, they also realize that disruptions to their org structure also affects the business too. So it's not a it's not a clear cut, oh, these guys are villains kind of situation. Like I understand if things are necessary, they need to be done, they need to be done. But at the same time, um, you know, it's not without risk to them either. So anyway, let me move on.
For better opportunities. Let's come down a little bit more, and he further solidifies what I just said. For some of us, through no fault of your own. It means moving forward to write the next chapter in your own career. That's right. Through no fault of your own. For all of us, it means picking ourselves up and writing a new chapter. For all of us, you're an executive at your company. You just get up and go to work the next day. What new chapter are you talking about? You still got billions of dollars. And so
That's where I disagree with him, and that's the point I was making, is that such layoffs, even though he makes it sound as though it comes at no stress to them, it actually does affect the companies, right? Because of what I told you earlier, like, if you take it to the extreme and you fire everybody and rehire everybody, you don't have the same company anymore. You have a different company. And the same thing applies to when you lay off 12% of your workforce, because guess what? Even though that 12% wasn't the high performing 12%, their roles were critical, right? Their roles did something. That's how I see it. So
does your father. Ernest Garcia II also has billions of dollars because he sold a bunch of his stock in 2020 over the course of 10 months when it was at an all-time high for about $3.5 billion. We'll go into all that stuff, into the fun facts later in this video. But now I also have to mention that the same day Carvana laid off 2,500 people, they made a purchase of $2.2 billion to acquire an entire another car auction company. Now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. It definitely feels awkward, though, and it's definitely a PR blunder. Maybe they needed to buy this to truly stay in business, and it just so happened to coincide with the 2,500 people being let go. But the time.
what do you think? What's your rebuttal to this?
A rebuttal to this is they purchased customers. That's what an acquisition is, right? You either acquire to destroy a business that you project that is going to disrupt yours and affect your revenue, or you pay for the customers, you pay to have the customers of another business that is in your space. In chess, sometimes you have to sacrifice pawns to get queens. Uh, yeah, like there's executive decisions that need to be made for the business and for investors. That's what drives corporations, right? That's what drives the Dow Jones, the NASDAQ exchange. Investors. I'm not sure
I
if he's going
get
to
that.
acknowledge that.
So again, I get your point. You've made a point. It's a good point, but there are hmm, I think I'm starting to argue intangibles now, and I don't like when I do that. But I still believe there are intangibles in any company, right? And yes, without knowing the specifics as to why they made this acquisition, right? This acquisition. So the point is, even though they made this acquisition, it could be good or bad. Like how I'm painting it all depends on the specifics of how this acquisition was done. But
Oh,
on the surface, it does look like, oh, you don't have money to pay your existing employees and so on, but you still had enough money to buy another company. Guess what? That company has employees too. So why did you let go of some employees? But yeah, what you said about acquiring customers makes sense though.
they traded employees
Uh,
for customers. And to your
yeah.
point, they inherited more employees, which after they learn the intellectual property and get all the documents signed off, they
Hmm.
said in the video, he said in the video, there will be like, another 2 rounds of layoffs or something to that effect.
Yeah.
There was something else that I was going to mention, and I think I lost my train of thought. Oh, yeah, yeah. Now, what is a bad example? Okay. Not this
Hmm.
Carvana. I don't think Carvana is a bad example with them acquiring another company after they freed up some revenue by eliminating 2,500 jobs, aka 12% of their workforce. Progressive, I remember maybe it was like 15 years ago, maybe it was 20 years ago. Actually, I think it was more than 20 years ago. Progressive, they did, like, if I can remember, they did massive layoffs of their workforce,
Hmm.
and then they paid. I might be butchering this. They paid like $20 million to put their business name on a stadium. Like, like very, like it had to be like within like 6 months or even less than
Mhm.
6 months. So and again, the maybe I could have sworn it was $20 million. I didn't say 20 million for no reason. Like that's what I remember, but someone could fact check me. But Progressive, they did layoffs, massive layoffs, and then they paid $20 million to put their name on the stadium. Now that even I would say is that's effed up,
Yeah,
right?
but based on your logic earlier, I could say, oh, that they paid that 20 million to acquire new customers, right? They could say that. That's the whole point of them, buying that stadium and blah blah blah, is for new customers. So, I, well, you know what? Let's just move on because there's still a lot we need to cover, and this video has already gone long enough.
timing. Oof, it's just so bad. So this is a form called an 8K that the executives of Carvana have to submit to the Security and Exchange Commission of the United States. And they're talking about the severance pay down here. All impacted team members will receive 4 weeks of pay, but then they go on to say the executive team is foregoing their salaries for the remainder of the year to help contribute to the severance pay for departing team members. I have to say, I can kind of see the marketing advantage of this. A bunch of people are going to be like, but Josh, they gave up their own salaries so that they could pay the severance. Well, I mean, first of all, the only reason they're
Exactly. That's so. I want to see what's his point now.
giving severance is because they're required to by law, because they said F the WARN Act, which says we have to give notice. So, I mean, there's that part of it too. But let me break down the numbers for you, and you can really see what this looks like. The first thing we need to look at here is the executive team is foregoing their salaries for the remainder of the year. There are currently 233 days left in the year, so they're giving up around 64% of their salary. That means they've already made 36% of their salary. So what does that look like for a CEO? This page shows how much the executives get paid, their total compensation, and this light blue bar you see here is their salary. So if we come down to the CEO, Ernest Garcia III, and we look at his salary, he gets paid $757,500 a year salary. But his total compensation, stock options, all that other stuff, brings him up to about $5 million a year in total compensation. He's giving up 64% of the $757,000 roughly, which means he has already made $275,000 this year so far. And that's not to mention he's, still getting all these other things in total compensation bonuses. And we can look at the rest of them too, right? This guy, 742,000, he's giving up 64%. So this guy's
I think Josh is being disingenuous here. Even though he's right, this compensation is it usually comes in the form of stock in the company, and these guys aren't really allowed to sell, or rather, they are discouraged from selling. So even though yes, they are giving up the rest of their salary for the end of the year, and from Josh's perspective, it feels like, oh, but they are still being compensated $4.4 million, blah blah blah. I still feel like, no, yeah, but they can't use that money. That money is kind of frozen in a way. So making he's projecting that, oh, they won't be hurt by it, but I doubt that it will actually affect them. That's what I think anyway.
at least made 250K so far this year. So, I mean, these people have already made tons of money this year, but it surely looks good when you tell the SEC, we're giving up the remainder of our salary to do this. So, is it a nice thing to do, or is it just because they have to, and this is how they're financing it, since they can't sell their stock because it's not worth anything? Let me
Mhm.
show you. August
A
13th,
point.
2021, the stock was
It's not even just they can't sell it because it's not worth anything. It's that they can't even sell it because uh, senior management selling their shares is a very, very bad sign for investors, right? That would even tank the share price of the company even further. So he's making it sound as though, um it's no big deal for them. It is a big deal. So in fact, I think, yeah, it's a very big deal.
valued at $361 almost. And then today we're down here at $36. That is quite the loss in value. So my opinion on it is that this is a very well-crafted way to tell the media and show the media and the people who are going to report on this, look at how selfless our executives are.
I doubt that. I think he's just wrong here. Yeah, I think he's just wrong here. This is really, really difficult to do. To say you forgo the rest of your salary for a year just to manage people's compensation. I think that was a noble thing to do. I think you're right at the end of the day, Scott. Like how many people have you employed? Like, if you are in that position, what would you do? Right? It's not like they had money sitting somewhere or something like that. At the end of the day, they had to pay out of pocket for it. So, well, kudos to them. You can't ding them for that. That's how I see it.
even though they ignored the WARN Act. Unless all of those employees were working there less than 6 months and worked there for less than 20 hours. Like, I highly doubt that happened. So, I mean, I don't know what's going on with the WARN Act, but it seems kind of weird. Kind of weird, Carvana. Let's move on to some of these LinkedIn posts because you're going to find, I mean, we do this every time, but here's a post from someone who got let go.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm gonna butcher this metaphor. Okay, when you were a child, did you like just have the hardest time understanding why your mother, your father, your grandparent, your uncle would tell you would tell you that you couldn't do something, and maybe even refuse to answer to you as a child about their reasoning,
Mhm.
right? This
Yeah.
because I
Yeah.
said so. Have you ever
Yeah.
heard like one day when you become a parent, you'll understand? Like, does that sound
Hmm.
familiar?
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah. It
first thing I
does.
think about when he's talking. Like, he's on the sidelines. He hasn't graduated, I don't think, to a CTO or any other C-level position where he has to even consider these trade-offs,
Mm.
these responsibilities, right? And so, why wouldn't he understand, right? The thought process and the difficult decision making of these executives. And as I relate to when I was a child, maybe the way that my parents handled or managed a situation that I didn't understand. You know, growing older, I can understand the motivation for them telling me why I couldn't do something, even if I felt that they did a poor job helping me understand that motivation. That would make me wiser at a younger age, right? So I just think it's a metaphor that maybe is applicable to Joshua.
Yeah.
That's his name,
Yeah.
and he doesn't know the situation that these executives are in. He doesn't. I know he thinks he's smart, and I know he thinks he knows a lot, but none of us knows the actual or intimate details of what's going on behind the scenes, right? Is there
Yeah.
selfishness? Absolutely. I'm willing to bet that we're human beings. That's what we do. We're political. We look out for ourselves. But I think there's some other factors that none of us know, including Joshua. So I feel like he's not being fair.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe I think we should wrap up at this point, but because there's still so much to go. But let me stop sharing my screen. I think we've seen enough. We get where he's coming from. We understand his motivations and all of that. If you guys are interested in watching the rest of the video, please, I'll put the links in the description. Go watch it. Let him know what your thoughts are. Um, I think here's what I think. His anger is justified, right? But it's justified for a different scenario. I think he's so used to attacking companies to the point that he's not even trying to see it from being in the company's position, right? So that even when they do things that are genuine, right, like foregoing their salaries and all those kind of stuff, they don't see it as he doesn't see it as um a real gesture. He sees it as them trying to manipulate the media and all those kind of stuff. I just think he's being overly cynical about it. But like I said earlier, I think you're on mute. Like I said earlier, right? The His anger is justified, but it's justified for a different scenario. Scenarios like we mentioned, where you let go of so many people and you still had enough money to be putting on stadiums and billboards and stuff like that, and spending lavishly and giving bonuses and stuff like that. So
So this is my opinion because he has his opinion. This is my opinion, Odie.
yeah,
If you look at some of the videos that Joshua produces, not me, Joshua produces a significant number of videos about his personal family situation. And specifically, he tends to broadcast to his viewers, I would argue, him being victimized by his family. Okay. The
Okay.
reason the reason why I'm mentioning that is because I have an opinion too, right? I don't know him, but the content that he has put out there that I've consumed uh, motivates me to believe that his personality type is victim. He's a victim. Employees are victims. Victimized. We get victimized. Life is unfair, right? How dare so and so mistreat me like this? I
No,
think a
I,
lot of us
I
have effed up families, and I think when someone has a mentality of victim, 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 Democrats, I think that it massages our mentality to paint that narrative to a lot of other areas, including
no.
executives and how they treat people.
Okay, so first of all, I'm going to push back on his behalf. He's not here, but I'll speak for him. Josh, if you're watching, I'm speaking for you now. Um, First of all, even if you're right, I'm not saying you're right, but even if you're right, it doesn't mean that he's wrong in this situation, right? Somebody could be a victim, and still point out a situation where people are actually being victimized. So at that point, you could argue that, oh, it's a case of the boy who cried wolf, whatever. But looking at the facts, looking at what he has mentioned, looking at what we've seen, right? Looking at some of the videos he has produced, there is legitimate concern there. And I think what people tend to do is people tend to brush those things under the rug. And I don't think he's being at having a victim mentality, because even he mentions it. Like, I think based on what I've watched from him, his stance is, don't fall under this delusion that, oh, we're a family at my place of work. See it as a business. The business will always care about itself, and you as an employee need to care about yourself, right? Don't expect the business to care for you. I think that has been his stance, and I agree with that stance, right? So it's not being playing a victim. I think in this particular video, like, it goes back to what I said earlier. In this particular video, he is overly attacking them to the point where he can't even see that, okay, maybe this particular scenario doesn't really fit the mold of all the previous scenarios that I have attacked. So that's how I'm
I have
interpreting
failed
it.
to capture anywhere in that video where he
Mm.
tells employees that they are employees, that they are disposable, and that they need to make sure that they have options available. I didn't
Yeah,
capture that anywhere in the video.
he did. I can
Okay.
rewind it. He did. He said specifically that, while you that he said, if you're still in that company, don't ever think the company is going to be looking out for you. Start, reaching out to CVs, start sending out your CVs, start looking for other companies, because you could be next, right? He mentioned that in the video.
Oh,
So,
well, I mean, okay, thank you for clarifying that. I
mhm.
wouldn't think that the advice would be, oh, go from one bad employer to another employer and see if they end up being bad as well.
No, no,
I
that
would
I
have thought
don't.
I would have thought the advice is like set up multiple channels of income, or at least strive to have a strategy for how to get multiple channels of income instead of being a employee and relying on a single employer to feed
uh,
you. But
this is
we can move on.
No, this is where you are now overstepping, right? Not everybody can be like you, right? Not everybody has an entrepreneurial mindset. Such people, if they started their own streams of income, started their own businesses, those businesses will just fail, right? Some people are good employees. It's their temperament, it's how they are built. I think where Josh is coming from is saying, even if you are primarily somebody who focuses on unemployment as an employee, don't go and be overly trusting of your company, that you don't even try to, when you see things happening, you don't even try to see if there are other companies that will take you, right? And just move and just do what's best for you as an individual, right? I
Okay.
think that's where he's coming from. So some people are just going to be employees, like, no matter how, and some people are just going to be business people, regardless of how you try to make them into employees, it just won't work. So
I feel better now.
yeah, it's the reality of it. Like, but even if you are someone who is, uh um what works for you is being, you know how to take orders, you're good at executing other people's vision, that's a good thing, right? But don't be overly involved in a company and assume that the company is going to look out for you just because you're an employee of that company. The company will always look out for its bottom line, and that's the fact.
All right. So, Odie, I would like to conclude with my final thoughts, and then you could conclude with yours.
Okay.
So, I know that maybe the hair was standing on people's arms for me giving my opinion. That's okay. It's going to happen more the more you listen to me. I'll say some outrageous things that maybe I'll mature later and I'll no longer hold that opinion. But I would just like to close with this. I Things are relative compared to one demographic of folks, uh, or several demographics of folks, maybe. Maybe I was handed the cards I was dealt, and maybe I didn't have as much privilege as other folks, other demographics.
Mm,
And maybe I just had to accept that, right? And work with it, right?
mm,
So that's me saying that yeah, there's other demographics of people that had more opportunities than I had, and I've always been a late bloomer, and I've always had to work harder to try to create opportunities that maybe other people seem to get by default. Okay,
mm,
that's one side. That's the side of like, oh well, life isn't fair. Why do I have to work so much? Why does it appear that I have to work so much harder to have the same opportunities and to get to the same checkpoints that other people tend to just be encouraged to do sooner because they have relationships and they have other things going on that are more
mm,
conductive to them getting more achievements faster. The other part is, well, I didn't grow up in the projects. My mother, she wasn't smoking crack, right? My daddy, he wasn't in prison, right?
mhm,
Sure, my parents had issues, but compared to people in the projects, people that were crack babies, I'm privileged, right? So, make
mhm,
long story short, um, I think that maybe maybe I'm mentally tougher than average people because maybe I've accepted that no one owes me anything. My parents don't owe me anything. It took me a long time to make the realization that my parents got together to have a good time and I was a product of it. The faster I realized that my parents do not owe me anything as much as society wants other members of society to believe that, the easier it was for me to move on and not get stuck on woe is me and not get stuck as being a victim. All right, those are my closing words.
So first of all, I will agree with you because we've had this conversation like multiple times about how in Nigeria, which is where I was born, which is where I was raised, we don't have anything like this. One act, one who. like, like if you wake up tomorrow and you are fired from your job, good luck even getting compensation. Like, I lived in a country where you get hit by an ambulance and the ambulance will escape, right? With your injuries, nobody will come to save you. That, like, I'm trying to paint a picture here. So I'm with you in the sense that, if you look at even some of the highest achieving black people, right? It's Nigerians. And the reason for this is that, we have your mindset, Scott. Like, it's common to us. Um, this mindset of nobody owes you anything, etc., etc. Like, it's so obvious to us that we don't even know that. It's like when we see the kind of things that people demand for in the West, we are like, wow, you people really have this. Oh my God, like it blows our mind. So I'm with you on that. But at the same time, I would say that we should not forgo, like, you remember what you say mother nature doesn't care, blah blah blah. And I told you that one of the things we do as a species, that's what engineering is, that's what medical healthcare is we are fighting back against what is quote unquote natural. It's natural to die at the age of 40, right? but we fight back with our medicine, our science, our techniques, our, to control the outcomes and get better outcomes, right? So from that perspective, I empathize with his message in the sense that we need to push for companies to be better. Granted, it's not realistic to expect every company to do the right things, but if we can influence, even if maybe 5% of the companies are doing it right, if we can influence 10%, 15%, 20%, that's a win. And I think if his video is able to do that, right, that's a win. It's just that I feel like where he goes too far is that he doesn't even acknowledge the areas where the companies actually, did right by the people, like giving them this severance, taking this severance from the management, which is what I said in the very beginning. I think the company is not really to blame here. Now, some of the decisions they made around purchasing another company may seem suspicious, but unless you are there, unless you are part of the management team, unless you know exactly how everything fits, you can't really criticize them. It would be wrong to criticize them, because I can bet you if Josh Fluke is able to grow his business into a very big business, and he makes a mistake and he needs to let people go, he will become the very villain he's attacking right now. So yeah. So yeah. All right. So that was a long
All
conversation.
right, let's close on that.
Yeah, let's close on that. So if you like this discussion, please like,
Subscribe,
subscribe,
share.
yeah, share, let others know. Let's hear your opinions. We love it when you guys comment. So please keep the comments flowing.